Many Americans say public schools, government schools, are one of the best parts of America. They're a melting pot. We're all in it together, and those schools built the country. And I believed that until I started reporting on schools. And now I say government schools are one of the worst parts of America. They are boring. They are more segregated than private schools, and they're much more expensive.
Money for teachers! Stop the cuts!
The education blob claims schools are underfunded, and kids would do better if only we'd give the schools a little more money. But this graph shows the absurdity of that claim. Spending's gone through the roof, while test scores have barely budged. The scores are those flat lines at the bottom. The blob also demanded smaller classrooms, and it got them, but oops, smaller class sizes did not increase performance. Bill Gates spent billions building smaller high schools. That didn't help either. I give Gates credit. He spent his own money, took measurements, and then when he found no improvement, he tried other ideas like Sal Khan. In contrast, the government blob spends your money, and when their experiments fail, they continue them anyway. No business can get away with that. It's why most every service in America has gotten better, faster, cheaper, but not education. Monopolies don't improve. Of course, American parents, especially those in the suburbs, think their kids' public schools are pretty good. But because there's no competition, they don't know the truth. International tests show that even the good suburban schools are mediocre compared to schools in the rest of the world. But without real competition, parents don't know what their kids might have had. Few of us can imagine the possibilities until we see the options. When phone service was a government-blessed monopoly, all the phones were black. All calls were expensive. Only when the monopoly was busted up did we get competition and the cheap phone calls and cool phones we have now. Competition makes the difference. The Postal Service couldn't get it there overnight. None of the brilliant managers at that government monopoly could make it happen. But once FedEx appeared...
When it absolutely positively has to be there overnight.
Then, suddenly, even the Postal Service could get it there overnight. Sometimes. So it's not that government is staffed entirely by lazy people. It's just that we rarely think of better ways to do things until competition forces us to. If there were a free market in education, schools would get much better. They'd compete for good teachers. The best teachers might make $200,000 a year. Government schools already spend more than that per classroom. Competition would create all sorts of innovation. I don't presume to know which innovation will be best. We've showed a few tonight, but as Frederick Hayek put it, competition is a discovery process. No one knows which innovation's best until they're tried. The good news is that the school choice movement has finally given the blob some competition. And a few kids, thanks to things like vouchers, charter schools, tax credits, now like going to school. I never did. But school is boring.
No, it's not! They just teach us in a fun way.
So you guys look forward to going to school in the morning?
Yes!
Those kids were at a charter school in Harlem. Once more parents notice, hey, Johnny down the street likes going to school and he's learning, then maybe they'll join the fight against the blob. And eventually, all of us will have much better lives.
Let me hear your voice!
But the unions make it hard to innovate. Actually, it's not just the unions. School reformers call the resistance the blob. It's like this Jabba the Hutt thing that can't be budged. The blob includes the janitors' unions, the politicians, school board bureaucrats. If you try to make a change, the blob says,
we don't do that here. We have to requisition downtown. We got to get 4 or 5 people to sign off. The deputy director of curriculum has to say this is okay. It's crazy.
At least today, some kids escaped the education blob.
So you guys look forward to going to school in the morning?
Yes!
That's our show tonight.
And now, John Stossel.
America's school children have been trapped in a government-run monopoly. The blob, a so-called public school system that stifles most all innovation. So schools don't improve. It's not for lack of money. We've tripled what we spend on K-12 education, but test scores don't go up. The good news is that there are all kinds of alternatives now that allow kids to escape the government monopoly. And now here's one more that I think you will be interested in if you watch my shows. It's because it was created by none other than Libertarian Congressman Ron Paul. For homeschoolers, you're introducing the Ron Paul curriculum, which is what?
Well, the curriculum is a freedom curriculum. It's based on the freedom philosophy and those things I've talked about. So if you're talking about economics, it's going to not be Keynesian. I mean, everybody knows I'm not going to teach Keynesian economics. It's going to be Austrian free market.
But you're not going to go into every home and teach. How's it going to work?
Well, it's going to be homeschooling. It's going to be through the internet. If we study the Constitution, we don't want to read it out of one of those textbooks that's so biased. They're going to read the Constitution, but they will have also a lecturer to do video lectures that the young people can watch at their own speed. And it's going to be designed to get people to read. It's going to be designed to people write. It's going to be designed to think about businesses and how to interact. So I'm very encouraged by this, and hopefully we can participate in this transition away from the disaster that's happening in our public school system.
And you're going to charge homeschoolers about $250.
A whole family.
But who needs to pay you? Stossel in the Classroom, my charity, it's free, and the teachers can get these free videos,
right,
some of which you're on,
yeah, matter of
explaining
fact,
economics.
Matter of fact, in the book, we mentioned about some of the free ones, but we have to, you know, sell our programs. But ours will be free from kindergarten up to 5th grade. So that's a pretty good start. I went through public school system, 12 years of it, but it's different today. And people are suffering. They don't know what to do, but there's so much poor education, there's so much crime, so many drugs and problems in public schools, the parents are looking for something. And there are a lot of options now. You have private school options, which some people can't afford, but homeschooling is affordable. You know, it isn't that bad. There are some free courses out there, and some are inexpensive, and the people are gravitating that way, and they get a much better education. Just think of how well the homeschoolers have done, you know, when it comes to competing with public schools.
They win the spelling bees and the
geography. They don't even teach geography anymore. That used to be my favorite subject. Now they don't even want to teach it anymore. They tried to close down or prevent the homeschoolers from developing in the 1980s, but the major case in Texas was one that...
They argued that we have to have uniform state education.
Yes.
Parents won't do a good job.
And it turned out not to be the case. If they close down homeschooling and private schooling, which they are going to continue to try to do, because what I'm afraid of is they're going to have a regulation when we do real well in homeschooling to come along and say one of the qualifications to get in college is that you have to have a degree from such and such school, no matter how smart they are, because otherwise we'll take the money from you. If push comes to shove, they might try something like that. But right now, the momentum is on our side. The numbers of people who
About 3% of the school kids now are homeschooled. It's going up to that.
What's the motivation to keep them? They get more money. You know, they're paid according to
they're
students.
in the public, the government system.
And the strongest group that wants to defend that public school system, of course, is the biggest union in the country, and that's, of course, the teachers union.
I hear homeschoolers, or I'm told, that they don't socialize. They're home. School is where you learn to mix with other kids.
Do you know, I believed that for a long time.
You didn't homeschool your kids?
No, I didn't. Things have gotten worse. But you were talking about socializing. I believed at one time that they would be asocial and wouldn't be good. But when I learned the difference is, homeschoolers were strong supporters of mine in Texas. We have a lot of homeschoolers. But they would come out, and you'd know them because it would be the middle of the week. The mother would be there with 3 of their kids. And they were able to ask questions and were dignified better than anybody I ever saw in the public school system. So there wasn't any real argument to be made that they're going to be antisocial.
Well, let's meet a couple homeschoolers. Can you kids come out? This is Veronica Andreodas. She's 16. Jeremiah Birch is 12. Both are homeschooled by different families here in New York City. You guys must have no friends if you're homeschooled.
Some people have said that. some people have.
Do you have any friends?
Of course we have. I find it entirely not true that homeschoolers have no friends. I've actually made a ton of more friends with the homeschooling program.
Well, how, if you're home all the time?
Well, there's a group of 7,000 parents in ICHEA, and they do little social activities.
Your mother made a video of a dance where homeschoolers get together. So this is in a church basement, and this is the kind of thing?
Yes, they hosted a little dance there for all the homeschoolers in the community. They have soccer classes. I went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, made a bunch of new friends there, and they do like 3 to 5 plays a year, and I was in one of them, and I made a bunch of friends there. And so I actually made a bunch more friends with homeschool.
And Veronica, you take ballet classes, karate lessons, you meet kids outside the home?
Yeah, exactly.
And what do you like about, I would think, being home with your mom? You like this?
Yeah, I actually really do, because it allows me to morph my curriculum into my interests and direct what I'm learning to help me learn more about what I want to do when I grow up. And I've really developed an interest in being a writer, and so I found that homeschool allows me to do extra stuff that helps me develop my mind so that I'm better prepared for that.
But your brothers go to regular school.
Yeah. When we all got to high school, my parents gave us the choice. They said, you can go to high school or you can keep on going to homeschool. And my brothers said, we want to go to high school. They felt like they could be more motivated to do work, and they thrived really well in the school environment.
And you wrote a Wall Street Journal op-ed about this.
I did. Yes.
That's how you came to our attention. Jeremiah, you have regrets at all? Things you miss in regular school?
No.
Sound pretty certain. And you weren't always homeschooled. Just the past 4 years. You tried private school, that was too expensive, then public school. In public school, you were bullied?
Yes, I was. I was bullied almost on a weekly basis because I was so small, and I was in kindergarten, so I didn't really know how to fend for myself.
One guy threatened to take your watch.
Yeah, I brought a little toy watch to school, and he said he would kill my family if I didn't give the watch to him, and I was scared because, I mean...
So are you just being homeschooled because you're hiding from government school?
No, it also works for my acting. I'm a performer and I sing, and it's good because I can have like a big audition one day, and then I can do school the other day if I'm busy all day with a show. I usually do it on weekends and sometimes holidays because that's when most of the schools are shut down and there's not really any auditions.
And it's not just your parents teaching you. You take live classes on the web.
She does.
I attend an online school called Veritas Press Scholars Academy, and so there are scheduled classes during the week, and I go on and I attend, and so but I can do that from home.
So, Dr. Paul, how would your curriculum add to things like that?
It would fit in, and I think the extra activity is very important that you pointed out. But I think the important thing that they're talking about, I noticed two things. One, it's self-directed. See, they pick and choose on what they want to do in their life and make their plans, and that's what a good program would be like. But the other thing is, it should be fun. It seems to me like they're enjoying what they're doing, and all you have to do is look at what's happening in public schools. There's a lot of boredom and, and no fun.
There is, but I'm going to stop you, and I should have stopped myself. We shouldn't call it public school.
Government school.
Government school.
Yeah.
Big difference. Thank you, Dr. Paul, Veronica, Jeremiah. I went to public school, or I mean government school. Supposedly a good one. New Trier in the suburbs outside Chicago. Routinely makes lists of top high schools. I got to go there because I lived in a nice neighborhood. And of course, most Americans are assigned a school based on where we live. People accept that, but that's crazy. What if you were assigned to your neighborhood grocery store? The store would have no incentive to improve, just like today's government schools. Fortunately, some states now offer vouchers that allow some poorer people to try a school outside their neighborhood. Parents love it. In Louisiana, some 8,000 kids got voucher money this year, and most use it to go to a private school. So parents love it, kids like it, but Eric Holder, U.S. Attorney General, doesn't. And last month, the Department of Justice went to court to stop Louisiana from issuing some of those vouchers. Why? Holder claims it'll interfere with his desegregation efforts. He wouldn't come on the show to explain, so let's ask Louisiana Congressman Steve Scalise. What's going on?
Hey, John, how are you doing? Look, in Louisiana, the state put in a program that allows 8,000 children that are low income to have real options if they're in a failing school. Eric Holder is saying that these students should be trapped in these failing schools and not have options if their parents choose to send them to a school that can actually give them a better opportunity for a future in life. So it's one of these perplexing things that you're seeing, and it just shows the warped and misplaced priorities of the Barack Obama administration. The fact that even in these budget times that are so tough.
Wait a second. I mean, they have a reason for this. They say that the vouchers impeded the desegregation process. And last year, Louisiana vouchers increased racial imbalances in 34 schools.
Well, I don't know where they're making those numbers up from, because over 90% of the students that we're talking about in Louisiana are minority students. And their parents are the ones who are saying, we want our child to be removed from this failing school so they're not trapped in a place that they can't get an education and go somewhere else where they have better opportunity in life. Why should you deny them that opportunity? Again, this is the parents saying, I don't want my child to be trapped in a school that's rated to be failing. This only applies to schools that are C, D, or F schools by the state's rating system.
And for the record, we think of the public school, government schools as this big melting pot, but they are more segregated now than private schools. And one study found in lunchrooms that different races were more likely to sit together and not self-segregate in private schools.
Absolutely. You will help desegregation by allowing this program to go forward. And again, it's been a very successful program, and the parents love it. Shouldn't this be about helping those parents and their children who are trapped in failing schools? And instead, Eric Holder says, I don't care that you should be trapped in a failing school so that we can engage in some kind of social experiment in Washington, D.C.
And Congressman, let me toss sort of an odd idea at you from the left. In Slate, there's an article which argues that if you send your kid to private school, you're a bad person because it's important to preserve the public schools. She writes, it would ruin one of the most essential institutions to get what's best for your kid. That's not for the common good.
Anybody who's disgraceful enough to try to take cheap shots at somebody's children because of a policy decision, I think it says a lot about their character. But if you look at kids that across the country, whether it's white, black, rich, poor, if someone's sending their kid to a private school, they're still paying taxes that go to that public school, and now that's one fewer child the public school has to educate. So there's more dollars per capita. It actually takes money away, in essence, from public schools if you shut down the private school system. So I'm not sure what they're trying to achieve. Again, maybe they just want to dumb down the system, but the fact that you've got public and private schools shows there's a need out there to fill a void where parents feel, look, if I think there's a better option to educate my kid, why would you want to deny the parent and the child that opportunity for a better education?
Why indeed. Thank you, Congressman Scalise. Coming up,
Thank you, John.
Union teachers rioting in the streets, smashing things. They're mad because they lost some privileges.
Who are we? The UFC!
That was a teachers' union protest outside my office. They were mad at me because of what I said about them on 2020.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
Then they chanted, Stossel, shame on you. And they're still mad at me because I criticized tenure and union rules that make it almost impossible to fire a bad teacher. These rules are even bad for good teachers because the best don't get paid more. But as bad as America's union rules are, there's a place where they're worse. In Mexico, union teachers have been able to sell their teaching jobs or give them to other family members. And they, too, could never be fired. Now, union teachers in Mexico are rioting because the new government there changed the rules. Here to explain this is the reporter who covers Latin America for the Wall Street Journal, Mary Anastasia O'Grady. So, what's going on? I consider this good news, except maybe the protesters will win.
Well, it is good news, and it's the first step. There's a long way to go in Mexico, but the teachers union in Mexico is the largest union in Latin America. Presidents have been unwilling to touch the privileges of the teachers union for almost 80 years.
They could really sell their jobs? That's part of their union deal?
Oh, they had privileges that were even more incredible than that. For example, when you graduated from the teaching school, you were guaranteed a job. And once you started that job, you had tenure for the rest of your life.
And you got tenure immediately?
Yes.
I once asked an American teachers union boss about tenure, one of the few who will still talk to me, Joe Del Grasso, who heads Newark's teachers union. Why have tenure? Most professions don't have tenure.
When you went into organized crime, you got to be a made person. There was like a ceremony, but nothing getting tenure, which is a nice thing.
And it's kind of like organized crime, and you're in forever unless you die or are killed.
Well, you know, there's that perspective of it.
And he's laughing, and this is just the way it is in most schools. And why do we accept this?
I think in Mexico for a long time, because it's a poor country, people had thought that what they really want to get is access. And it's only recently, I think, that the awareness is growing in the country that if Mexicans are not educated, they're not going to be able to be part of the middle class.
And so the new president says, I want to change this. These riots have gone on off and on for more than a month. They went on before they voted on the new rules, but the rules did pass.
Yeah, I think the rules passed because they're not satisfied with just growing a little corn in the backyard anymore. They want the more high-tech jobs that are coming to Mexico because of the North American Free Trade Agreement. They want to be part of that game. And so even though the special interests of the teachers union remains very powerful and, as you can see, very activist, a large percentage of the Mexican population backs the president on this one.
In America, when teachers' unions protest, they are noisy and disruptive. But in Mexico, they take hostages, they shut the whole city down.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that actually this backfired on them, particularly when they did it in Mexico City and people couldn't get to the airport, and a lot of the big boulevards were closed because Mexico City already has a big traffic problem.
Why do they continue to protest? They think they'll get it changed back?
They do. They think they can get a change back, and they also think that they can push back in the process of implementation. I think that's really one of the big questions that remains out there. They changed the law in the books, but is this going to be really implemented?
And a few years ago, a teachers union boss planned to give 59 brand new Hummers to top union officials until people heard about it, protested,
Right.
and that was stopped.
Well, this explains why the teachers union has been so powerful. You know, imagine they collect dues. That particular union has 1.4 million members. They collect dues from all those teachers, and they go into a pot, and there's no transparency. There's no law that says that the union has to show how the money is spent. And that particular union boss actually is in jail right now because the president had her arrested. But the other thing is that they could use the money to spread it around to the politicians and bribe people. We don't know. I mean, I'm making allegations that I'm fairly certain are probably true, but it's all been one big black box.
The protesters have taken hostages?
Yes, they said, well, we're going to take these hostages and hold on to them until you guarantee teaching jobs for the graduates from the school. And
what happened?
Oh, they eventually let them go, but you know, the problem remains. It's just they have kind of moved on, looking for new hostages, I suppose.
Now, the teachers union exists in many countries because the world copies America. Schools get government funding and have little real competition. Often the result is schools even worse than ours. So what's a parent to do? Well, a British researcher, James Tooley, was surprised to discover that even in the poorest places, parents will pay to send their kids to private schools.
Even in these places where parents earn only $1 a day, they will often take their kids out of free government schools and instead pay, typically $1 a week, so their children can attend private schools like this one.
In a small village like this, there are 6 private schools. Can you imagine that? A small village, 6 private schools. What we found in my study was that in poor areas like this, the majority of school children are in private school, and these schools outperform the government schools at a fraction of the teacher cost.
And in Latin America,
I think anybody who has the money to send their child to a private school in Latin America will do it because they know that that's their ticket into the middle class, and without it, they're going to have a very rough time.
because in the government schools, often the teachers just don't show up, just sit there, don't teach.
Precisely. I mean, they perform very badly. Mexican schools are at the bottom of the OECD ranking, 34th out of 34 countries in terms of the achievement of the students. So they're doing a very poor job.
Thank you, Mary O'Grady. So if you'd like to keep this conversation going, go to Twitter or Facebook and use that hashtag, the blob, to let people know what you think. And I'd like to see what you think too. You've heard of homeschooling. We talked about that tonight. Homeschooling was recently considered radical. Politicians said, we must be in charge of education. Parents can't teach, and if they do, their kids won't socialize. Well, now we know it's not true, and average homeschooled kids do very well. But even homeschooling has structure. The parent is the teacher. Often states dictate some of the curriculum. Today, the most radical form of schooling is something called unschooling. Homeschooling where the parent doesn't teach, and there are no tests. The kids do whatever they want. And I was surprised to learn there are also schools that practice that. Kennedy checked one out in Massachusetts.
If I show up for school, what's my day?
Beats me.
At Sudbury Valley School, there are no classes, no tests, and no curriculum. Students are only required to show up for 5 hours a day.
When you get here, you have to check in.
Okay.
And when you leave, you have to check out. These are the only have-tos in the day.
It's just so amazing to just come here every day and know that I can do whatever I want.
Sometimes what they want to do is play video games. Others play music for hours.
Why did you start Sudbury Valley School?
We had children. My wife and I had children, and our oldest child was getting to be school age. And it was a horrible prospect to put him through the regular school system. They do their best to destroy the natural interests, curiosity, and passions of children.
Here, nothing is forced on kids, not even learning to read.
Don't you think children will figure that out?
I learned to read when I was probably 11.
Yeah, I taught myself how to read.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I don't know, I just tried and tried.
One of the coolest things about being here is, like, I didn't know if I wanted to go to college last year, because, like, when you go here, it's not like anybody's telling you, like, yeah, you need to go to college. My path, like, has led me to going to college.
At first, it seemed like there were no rules, but there are rules. It's just that the kids have an equal say in making the rules. 1 vote per kid.
The community decides everything. And by the community, I mean the collection of students and adults. There is no hierarchy here whatsoever.
When they opened the school, everyone was skeptical.
The lead lawyer was pacing back and forth on the floor. He said, 4-year-olds have the vote. My God, they'll just vote candy for themselves. The school will never run.
But that's not what happens. The kids run a court system.
So this is the meeting of the Judicial Committee.
Yep.
It's basically a school courtroom.
Yeah, so instead of going up and telling a teacher, blah, 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 did this, it's like a whole meeting.
But I'm still surprised they don't vote themselves candy if they really have this control.
Well, it's interesting because since they govern themselves, they're in charge of their own education, the kids are really in charge of the school, and they're much harder on themselves than any teachers or administrators would be. And you have kids ranging in age from 4 to 19. A bunch of 19-year-olds don't want 4-year-olds bouncing off the walls all high on sugar.
And we showed the kid playing video games. I would think, I mean, my son would have spent all day playing video games.
Yeah, that would be my worry, sending my girls to a school like this. And I think most parents feel that way. I was really surprised to see that many kids were gathered all different ages around computers with each other. They were collaborating. Many of them were in the art studio. They were painting. They were playing music.
All right, painting, playing music, but were any learning math and difficult things?
They say they do. I mean, it's a hard thing for an outsider to measure. We saw kids who were engaged on computers. They weren't necessarily playing computer games. They might have been doing really intense academic research, and many of them were sitting around reading by themselves.
And they must learn something because the parents choose this. It's a private school. They have to pay $8,000.
They do, and there are parents who are obviously non-traditional, for whom public school doesn't work. They don't like the model. It doesn't work for their kids. So they seek this school out as a way for their kids to really be in charge of themselves. And they trust, the trust is the most important thing, they trust their kids will learn.
And most do go to college.
85% of them, we were told by the founders, go on to college.
Now, I'd be nervous about enrolling my kids in an unschool. Parents told Kennedy what convinced them is that this school gets kids to like learning.
What is it about the school that attracted you?
Well, he wants to come, which has not been the case in several other schools. He told me the other day, he's like, Mom, wake me up for sure. I was like, who are you? What have you done with my teenager who sleeps till 2 in the afternoon?
It teaches you the real world.
What did you do in public school that's different from here?
Everything's different from public school.
Yeah.
From here. Because you get to have fun all day.
Go to a public school and you watch kids come out for recess and they're like being let out of prison. Yes. Our kids aren't like that. They're not in prison. They don't have to be like that.
How would you describe your school?
Awesome.
Your friends who go to other schools, are they jealous?
Yes. Yes.
If you were going to build your perfect school, what would it be like?
This.
Would it?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, the kids say it's perfect, but you want to go to college. Colleges want a transcript, grades, a
Yeah, there are
record.
no grades, there are no transcripts, there are no classes. There's nothing like that. They prepare themselves for the SAT. They teach themselves higher math. They organize their own education. Sometimes they kind of cram it in the last year, but they manage to get into college when they want to go.
There are now dozens of schools like this around the world. It's hard to measure success when they don't take the standardized tests, but the fact that this is not new. That school was how old?
It's been around since 1968.
So
and
40
they said
years old. And
the hippies were the ones who gave them the hardest time. So they have survived and thrived regardless of people's political affiliations trying to keep them down.
You have kids. Would you send them?
I would think about non-traditional methods, and I was certainly intrigued by it, but like the founder said, there's a giant chasm to overcome in order to trust your kids to go there. I don't think I've overcome that chasm quite yet, but it is interesting.
Or in short, no. So, Kennedy, thank you. Finally, technology's getting into schools, making things easier for teachers, often more fun for students. There's a website called Stumble Upon, which helps people find the best web pages for them. And the head of growth for Stumble Upon is 24-year-old Aaron Jin. And his latest project is finding new ways that technology can enhance education. And you're going to do this through something called a hackathon, which my wife would say, well, you must be a crook if he's doing a hackathon.
Yeah. Hackathon is basically, we call it a marathon coding event. And after I finished...
also, we old people misunderstand the use of the phrase hack, too, right? Hack doesn't mean break in?
No, back in sort of the 90s, it had that sort of connotation. But today, it means creativity, and you have sort of limited time. So how do you create an outcome that you want with limited resources? And a hackathon, you usually have 24 hours or a very short amount of time to solve a problem.
So you're doing this in Miami on October 11th, and for a winner gets a $5,000 prize if, after coding for 24 hours straight,
they make a product that the judges think is like, wow, that's pretty amazing. So the goal is to, with that short amount of time, you can find something, a very creative solution to a problem that's been, around for years.
What makes you so certain that technology has solutions?
It's already working right now. We see a lot of very successful education startups popping up. Khan Academy, which is
well, let me explain that. Khan Academy, it's an online academy started by hedge fund analyst Sal Khan, who once tutored his young cousin to help her with math.
That worked out well, so then I started tutoring her brothers and more cousins and all the rest.
To save time, he posted his lectures on YouTube and was surprised to discover that thousands of people, soon millions, had watched them.
What Sal Khan has done is amazing.
Now Khan is funded by Bill Gates, and he offers web lectures on everything from history to economics to computer science.
You just happen to be good at teaching?
Well, I'll take that as a compliment.
But bringing his skill to government schools threatens the blob.
There's a huge bureaucracy, most of which wants to say no to change the system.
It's the blob, people call it.
It's the blob, and it is. And I think what's fun from our point of view is that we are able to reach students outside of the blob.
And inside, too. At first, teachers felt threatened, but most came around when they saw how their kids got excited about learning.
They're happy to walk in the door every morning. They're excited about math. It isn't, oh, we're doing math. It's like, oh my gosh, we have math this morning. That's great.
Actually, just like learning new things. It's way more fun to do math.
So finally, after all these years of kids being bored in school and not learning math, that's over?
I think it might be.
So what other new cool things will make a difference?
So we have another startup based in New York called Skillshare, which is what I like to call the iTunes for education, where you can go on there, search any topic from learning how to play volleyball to learning coding, and then there's a teacher available, whether around you, who you can do like a one-on-one type session, or online. So consumers now can go and pick a topic and can learn from the best in their area without ever going to...
They pay a fee?
Yeah, they pay a fee. It's all whatever the teacher wants to set, and there's multiple teachers competing for that same group of students.
There's also something called Schoolology. What's that?
Now you can have a single place where you can track the progress of your child over the course of their life.
You get a daily report card.
It's where they can communicate about whether grades or report cards or participation in extracurricular activities.
The parent no longer has to wait over a month for the first report card.
Yeah, the feedback loop's a lot faster, which thus you can make changes very quickly.
And then there's Remind 101. What's that?
That was started by one of my friends, and basically he always had trouble remembering, what was due the next day, what did I have to turn in, and so he developed this platform which basically allowed teachers to text message their students safely.
And Remind 101 asked some Michigan students and teachers how they use the app.
Most of my teachers use Remind 101 to remind us of upcoming quizzes or tests.
They receive reminders on my blog. Many of today's students tend to not look there though, but they do look at their phone instantly.
A Harvard study found text technology increased classroom participation and homework being turned in.
The response rates for text messages is usually over 80%. I mean, just think about how we use text messaging now. If someone sends it to you and that little one is still up there, and you haven't responded, you automatically try to open it and click it. Students, people my age, we're always on our phones, we're always texting, so.
And I hate all of you, but thank you, Aaron. I don't really. And